Hello everybody, it's Catherine from Jane Catherine on Books, and we're in a different location today. We're in the middle of putting some new bookshelves. We've got some new bookshelves coming for our lounge, and they're going to be all along the back wall because we're running out of space. I've sold the grey bookshelves that you're probably used to seeing in my films when I film in there, and we're getting some new ones. So there's books all over the floor, there's stuff all over, so it's just easier to film my suggestions for non-fiction November in here on my sewing table, my craft table. So it's that time of year yet again, non-fiction November. It soon comes round, doesn't it? And usually we have Olive, a book Olive. She first started it. She initiated non-fiction November, and we also have non-fic books. And I'm sure I need to go and have a look what the challenges are this year. I don't think I'm taking part in the challenges as such, but I will be reading some non-fiction. But I like to give you a bit of a selection from my own shelves of non-fiction books for you to have a look at in case you haven't come across them. I apologise if I have shown one or two of these before. I can't remember, because I mean I think this is the 4th non-fiction November I've been involved in, so I've tried to mix it up. I've tried to put newer books in for you. So let's have a look, see what we've got. There are some favourites anyway. Couple of craft ones to start with. This is called Bound by Rachel Hazel, and as you know, I've started my craft channel now, Jane Catherine Creative, and we're starting to bind my own books, junk journals, etc. And I just wanted to learn a bit more about it. So this is lovely. 15 beautiful book binding projects. So there's all sorts in here. That's lovely. Some lovely illustrations. Everything is explained in detail. There's some great photographs about how to fold some of the paperwork, and as you're putting together your books and things. There's a list of materials that you need to make that particular project. So I do like craft books that are like this, that are set out like this. I find them very interesting. I find that they're easier to follow. You've got, you know, lovely illustrations. You've got a list of what you need. And then, you know, you've got step-by-step instructions in picture format. And yeah, it's a lovely book. I'm really enjoying it. I've not made anything out of it yet, to be honest, but that's Bound by Rachel Hazel. And then my latest non-fiction purchase is another craft book, and this is Modern Handstitching, Dozens of Stitches with Creative Freeform Variations by Ruth Chandler. And again, this is a lovely book. I do a lot of hand embroidery, and I'm doing a series on stitch, on learning certain new embroidery stitches and things. So yeah, if you love all things craft, or you want to learn a little bit of hand embroidery as well as reading your books, then go over to Jane Catherine Creative. This is lovely as well. This is nicely illustrated, shows you how to do the stitch in simple photographic format. Then you've got little tips and some ideas to follow. Go on to backstitch and some ideas, and it's like this throughout. They've got the basic stitches at the beginning, and then by the time you get to the back, you know, it's showing you more complicated pieces, and some illustrations from I think that's actually from the author, Couching. I love Couching, it's one of my favourites, and it's very effective. So beautiful if you love your sewing books, your craft books, and you like them to be set out with photographs and easy tips. This is a lovely one. And if you've never done any embroidery stitching before, then I think that's a lovely one to start with. Modern Handstitching, Ruth Chandler. Then we can't forget that it's nearly bonfire night, nearly the 5th of November. So this is remember the 5th of November. And it says the history of Britain in bite-sized chunks even. Judy Parkinson. Lovely little, a memoir really of different periods in British history. At the front you've got a lovely list, chronological list of major events that happened in Britain through the ages and the different periods, like Georgian Britain, then we'll go to Victorian, list of monarchs. Very good if you're a quizzer. You know, if you go into loads of pub quizzes or whatever and you need to learn lists of different things, you know, they might suddenly, it's like on the television if you watch The Chase. Oh, well, who was on the throne in 1066? And, you know, you can, oh, it was Harold II. Battle of Hastings, that's all I remember about 1066 from history. I loved history actually. So it's a lovely book. It's only a page, so it's not going into great detail about everything. But you know, it's something that you can read and get a bit of a feel for what happened in those times. And also I think if you read a lot of historical fiction, things like this can be quite helpful. I'm reading one at the moment that's in the 1600s, and you know, you think, right, okay, I can have a look what's happening around the 1600, the British East India Company. And actually one book I'm reading is based in India and the other one is actually in the 1600s in Britain. So you know, you could have a look what's happening there around the time of William Shakespeare, etc. And then, goodness me, we've come straight to the 5th of November. How lucky was that? That was a bit of luck that it went to that page for me. So the gunpowder plot. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the gunpowder plot and what happened on the 5th of November, it was a plot to actually blow up Houses of Parliament. Couldn't think then. Houses of Parliament in 1605, and Guy Fawkes was the leader of the gang. And so in the UK we have bonfire night, as it's now tends to be known, as a remembrance for this particular, it's sort of not as common now, not as popular, what's the word, not as popular now than it used to be. And obviously there are those that misuse it, and you know, the dog Nelson goes and hides under the bed now. Between now and about the 8th he'll be under the bed every night. Right, okay, what we've got next, we've got the Book of Tides. Now, you know I love water, anything to do with water. One of my non-fiction challenges, my very first non-fiction November on BookTube, I read Tristan Gooley, and about, what's that one called? I've seen it once, but I wasn't going to show it again because I keep getting that out every year. Something of water. Can't remember it. I shall put it down below. I can't think now. I've had a look on my shelves in here because this tends to be a lot where the non-fiction books live, in the little bedroom with my craft stuff. Can't think what that was about, what it was actually called, and it was fascinating, and anything to do with the sea, to do with water. So this is a lovely book. It's called The Book of Tides by William Thompson, a journey through the coastal waters of our island. So if you are interested in water and different, there's geographical information in here. Again, we have got some photographs all about different tides, especially if you're a yachts person. You'd probably find this a nice Christmas gift to give somebody that's sailing for pleasure, and all the different waters round the British Isles, different wind directions, and quite technical for me this, for my non-fiction choices. But I think it's one of them you can dip in and out of. you know, warning, this adventure is not for beginners. And it makes you appreciate that we should respect the sea and we should respect water, because it is very powerful, and it's quite fascinating, really. Not to everybody's taste, but if you like me and you love anything to do with sea and water and the power it has, then this is a lovely book. Very interesting. Not read much of that yet, but that's The Book of Tides by William Thompson. Just want to give another little mention to a book that I've already discussed this year, and it's Unthinkable, Extraordinary Journey Through the World's Strangest Brains. This is written by Helen Thompson, and it's a really good, it's a good read. I keep dipping in and out of it. And imagine being permanently lost, seeing auras, never forgetting a moment, an endless hallucination, switching personalities, becoming unreal, feeling other people's pain, waking up dead and turning into a tiger. So it's all different psychological issues, and they have some great case histories in here, and fascinating. It's really fascinating. I mean, the mind, the working of the mind is fascinating. And it says our brains are stranger than we think. We take it for granted that we can remember, feel emotion, navigate, empathise and understand the world around us, but how would our lives change if those abilities were dramatically enhanced or disappeared overnight? So she's a science writer, science author is Helen Thompson, and what I've read so far of this, it's very, very interesting. Some of these non-fiction books can be a bit heavy going, but to me that's the beauty of non-fiction. You can read a lot of these in small chunks amongst your, you know, the other books that you're reading, your novels that you're reading. But I wanted to give that another mention, because that was it. I know I only got it this year, but was it published this year? And next, Dogpedia, a compendium of canine curiosities by Justine Hankins, and this is from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home in London, and proceeds from this book go towards, royalties from it go towards Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, so it's nice to give a little bit to charity. This is a lovely little book. Look at the paw prints. Beautiful end papers with little paw prints on. Oh, this is, I got this in 2016 for David. Happy birthday 2016, all our love, Kath and Nelson. Oh. Right, this is lovely. All different things to do with your doglets. Dogs' behaviour and different types of, whether they're hunting dogs or sniffer dogs with drugs, dogs in myth and legend. Just a nice, interesting non-fiction look at dogs and different breeds, and for a good cause. So thought I'd mention that one. One that I perhaps have mentioned before, but it's one of my favourites. And I don't know what it's got inside it. Some sort of information. You always find stuff, don't you? You stick inside books. You think, I'll just shove it in here till I need it, and then forget where you put it. So, this is another lovely little, it's quite plain on there, so it's got a lovely cover. And I'm surprised how many people are really interested in islands, and finding out about different islands in the world and the wildlife that's on there, and also, you know, things living on the coast. I'm always fascinated by geological structures, and how the different strata of rocks look. And, you know, as somebody that does textile art, I get loads of inspiration from how certain geographical features look, and the patterns and the designs and everything. So I like to find out about different islands, mainly for geographical reasons, but there's so many people that love them just because they want to know more about these small islands around the world. Some of them aren't inhabited or whatever. So this is a lovely book. This is it's for those of you overseas. It's a celebration of islands around Britain, but I think it might be something you're interested in. Matthew Clayton and Anthony Atkinson. Lundy, Rockall, Dogger and Fair Isle, which are all islands that you hear on the British weather forecast, because for fishermen at midnight we get the weather forecast, so they know what the seas are going to be doing. And this is gorgeous. All different islands around the UK. Again, the Channel Islands. Yeah, very fortunate being to the Channel Islands many times. Been to Jersey and Guernsey many times. We've never been to Alderney or Sark, so that's something that we'd like to do. Lindisfarne, which is also called Holy Island, up in Northumberland. That's quite a spiritual place. We've been there. Lundy Isle, and some of these we've never been to either. You know, the Orkneys in Scotland, Skye, the Isle of Lewis. If you recall that when we were talking about Anne Cleeves, you know, I love that series with Jimmy Perez in, the crime series that's based in the Scottish Highlands. Then there's a whole section here, and you will recognise, you know, some of these islands that Eris Kay, she did a book there, and I think on Lewis. And that's really interesting because there's some stunning scenery up in Scotland. Lovely little book, Kieran Island. This reminds me of the like Enid Blyton sort of picture. Oh, it's right. 5 on a Treasure Island, published in 1942 originally, was the first of Enid Blyton's famous 5 books. And the setting is Kieran Island, and it's off the Dorset coast. So there we go. Sodor, Thomas the Tank Engine, and that's near the Isle of Man, which is on the west coast. Again, lovely little book. There might be something here that you fancy for Non-Fiction November. But also, they make lovely gifts for Christmas. I always like to give non-fiction books. I don't think you can go far wrong with non-fiction if you know what people are interested in. Oh, right, we'll have a look at this one, something a bit different. The Ultimate Mathematical Challenge. And it's created by the UK Mathematics Trust, forwarded by Marcus de Sautoy. And this, you can, like, I think there's 52. Let's have a look. There's one for every week. I'm sure there is. Excuse me flicking through this. Not in our usual filming place. So I'm hoping I'm still in shot. 48, 49, 50. Week 50, 52, there's an extra one, 53. So there's a challenge for every week of the year, and it's the Ultimate Mathematical Challenge. And again, this is one that I got for David. I think this was last Christmas actually. It's a HarperCollins book, and you know, there's different mathematical puzzles to solve. So if you've got somebody in your family that loves, and also this is a it's a crossword, but all the words are answers to mathematical questions. Really lovely book. I think they have that on the Book People. Yeah, got that from the Book People. Couple of books here which is part of the Disney series, and they are the Small World Library, and we've got the full set for the boys when they were young, and these are geography non-fiction books for children, and of course anything Disney. Some people just collect Disney books, whatever. So the Pyramid Caper, An Adventure in Egypt, So gorgeous illustrations telling you some information about the country. Each book is a different country it covers, and of course we've got all the Donald and all his gang. And I think, you know, if they use characters that children love, I think they're more likely to learn and take note of what actual facts are being given them. But they've got some gorgeous illustrations. So that one, I'm just giving you a couple of examples because we do have quite a few in the set. So this is in Egypt. This one here is The Riches in the Rainforest, an adventure in Brazil. Look at this, look at him on top of this alligator. I'm hoping it's an alligator. I hope there aren't any natural history purists out there that are going to tell me it's a crocodile or whatever. I don't know, I think it looks like an alligator actually. But anyway, I'm guessing. Again, lovely story, all about the rainforest. And yeah, we need to be looking after our rainforest, don't we? So I think if we start children at a young age learning all about it and learning to respect their environment, then I think that's a good thing. And these must be 20 years old now, but you can get the Small World Library series, and yeah, they're a beautiful set to buy for your children. Very informative, and even for us, you know, as adults. I don't know anything about every country in the world, so yeah, great read for adults too. And the last three I'm going to recommend is a bit of girl power, and these are all about women in history, remarkable women in history, really. And yeah, I love all three of these books. So the first one is Spitfire Women of World War II by Giles Whittle. And often people forget, or they don't realise, that female pilots played a big part in World War II. They weren't actually in combat, but they used to fly the planes to the different bases, take them where they needed to be for various campaigns, and still put their lives at risk by flying these planes over, you know, enemy areas. And often they're the sort of forgotten heroes of the Air Force, as it were, in the war. And this is really interesting book. Very interesting, and it's, you know, it's the sisterhood. They all looked after each other. They flew Spitfires, Hurricanes, Lancasters, and they came from all over, every continent, and they were vital for the men to go and fight their campaigns. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting recommendation if you fancy finding out more about the women's plane transport. The next one is A Woman Lived Here, Alternative Blue Plaques. So Remembering London's Remarkable Women by Alison Vale. Now, we have blue plaques all over the place that are like, I was thinking like Harry Potter then, was like the memorals, rememorals, or whatever they call those balls that used to come with messages in so you didn't forget things. But these plaques are on the sides of houses, and you know, you've probably seen them going about, you know, Emily Bronte lived here, or such a person in history lived there. And you get them for all sorts of people that have achieved in periods of history. And this book is actually highlighting all the blue plaques that are around in London for women that have done remarkable things in history. And it's fascinating. It goes by different areas in London, and I mean, I don't know London too well really, or roughly an idea where most areas are, but not in great detail. And you know, if you did want to go, people are interested in going and spotting these blue plaques and finding out a bit more about the place. So I highly recommend that book, and for those of you that are interested to visit different parts of London where there's something of historical value, then I think this would be a good guide for you. Now, I've quickly been and gotten, that's not good English. I've been and retrieved from our bookshelves How to Read Water. That's it. I couldn't think of its name. Tristan Gooley, How to Read Water. And I read this for my very first non-fiction November 4 years ago, and I loved it. I really found it fascinating. There's all sorts of symbolism and Native American symbolism for water. You know, the water sound maps. I've made all sorts of comments in here because this is a book that I'm always going to keep. From wild swimming in Sussex to wayfinding off a Marne via the icy mysteries of the Arctic, Tristan Gooley draws on his own pioneering journeys to reveal the secrets of ponds, puddles, rivers, oceans and more, showing us all the skills we need to read the water around us. So I do recommend that, and you know, that would be read that with the Book of the Tides. I'm going to dip in and out of that again and read some more. I've read this once, but I still keep going back to it. And then finally another one for girl power, and this is by Lucinda Hawksley, and there's a foreword by Dr. Helen Pankhurst, and it's March Women March and How Women Won the Vote. And this is a really interesting catalogue of events, really. It's what it is showing things that have happened in history so that they're not forgotten about. And I think it's very important that, you know, we do have the ways and means of recording historic events and part of our own history, whatever country we come from. So this is an interesting look at that, and I find it's something that I feel passionate about, that all girls, you know, this is certainly obviously another one for the UK, but I think it's very important that women vote. You know, people like this went through a lot to make it's the, you know, the signs of equality there that made it that it wasn't true equality in the beginning, because only certain women could vote. Not everybody could originally, but I think now it's easy in today's society for the girls, especially like our teenagers that are 18 now, able to vote. Do they really understand the importance of it? And this is not a political thing by any means, because goodness me, we'll not go there. We'll not go down that route of what I think about everything that's happening at the moment here. But I do believe that we should use our vote. People have, you know, lost their lives really in some respects to get the vote for women, and I think we should always utilise it. And this is just like a documentary really and it's around the world, so it's not just covering the UK, but there's a very interesting section on women in New Zealand getting the vote, and there's stuff in here that I didn't know about, so I found it very interesting. And yeah, if you're wanting to pick the subject of women in history who have done remarkable things, then obviously we've got 3 really good titles right here. We've got March Women March, Lucinda Hawksley. Many will know Lucinda Hawksley from historical documentaries on the television. This has got several people in here named for the blue plaques that have been done in their honour. And this is by Alison Vale. And then also, very importantly, the Spitfire Women of World War II by Giles Whitwell. So there are my recommendations for 2019 non-fiction November. Let me know if there's any there that you haven't heard of before but like the look of, or what your plans are for non-fiction November. And I'll see you again next time, hopefully with my new bookshelves. Woo! Bye for now.